back up to the top of my agenda. I'm going to call the December 8th, 2020 Town Council meeting to order at 7:01. If you could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you very much. All right, that gets us to number 4, proclamations and presentations, of which we have none tonight. Number 5, public petitions, communications and public participation on any subject matter within the jurisdiction of the Town Council with a 2-minute limit. If you are on a device, if you go to the participants, you can raise your blue hand. We'll call on you in order in which you raise your hand. If you're on the phone, it is *9 to raise your hand, same deal. And if you are called on, please state your name and address for the record. I am not seeing, oh, Bob Rubino.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Bob Rubino, 296 Wygold Road. I'm going to speak to agenda item 8.1. I'm very much in favor of the continuation of Ordinance 60. So I'd like to direct my brief comments to provide color perhaps to the genesis and intent of two decades ago of the formulation of Ordinance 60, also known as the tax freeze program for qualifying seniors and the permanently disabled. Back in the 90s, those of you who were lucky enough to be in Tolland, you probably recall Tolland was experiencing a phenomenal building boom of one new house every 3 days. Whereas some would laud this as a boon to our grand list, by the end of the decade, this boom and its accompanying increase of over 1,000 new homes resulted in a staggering demand for services, namely in the construction of schools, maintenance of roads, trash collection, you name it. As these new homes were principally built for white-collar younger families, the additions to the grand list couldn't keep up with the demand for services, and mill rates along with property values began to rise. For the seniors in town, many which arrived during Tolland's boom in the 60s, this group was definitely feeling the squeeze. Sitting on the council at the time, we wrestled with how to equitably address this growing divide and to do right by our seniors that in large part built the town. We established a committee comprised of community stakeholders ranging from ordinary citizens, clergy, business owners, and members of town staff to formulate a program that would do the most good for those most at risk. We conducted a statewide review of 20 other municipalities and the programs. None of them, with the exception perhaps of Woodbridge, offered a tax forgiveness program we envisioned. But we also saw that as Woodbridge did not institute a means test, their program went insolvent 2 years after inception. You can only imagine if you were a participant of such a program and all of a sudden your tax bill jumped because the program ended, how bad that would be. So the result of those efforts became Ordinance 60. And at the time, because we weren't sure of its success or participation, we put a sunset provision of 10 years on the ordinance, and it's gone through several reviews since. In item 8.1, you'll see in your packet some spreadsheets that show the nightmare of administering this program. You can only imagine Walter Lawrence, the tax collector at the time, before the advent of personal computers, the nightmare he had to deal with. I suspect what's going on now is that you have many wheels moving where a lot of this data is being entered by hand. And I think it's high time maybe we establish a committee to review Ordinance 60, to look at opportunities to do two things. The first is to make it easier to administer and to make it more predictable. If you look at in your packet on 8.1, I think the very last thing we ever envisioned was something we at least referred to as a tax freeze, was the taxes going up. It's not a very predictable program as it currently stands. And I'd like to put my name in the hat if you wish to establish such a committee to review this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bob. And I hope you stick around for the conversation on that, but in case you have to jump off, I would like to just kind of say thank you. I am very fond of this ordinance. I think it does a lot of good. And I'm highly in support of any way we can make it easier to manage in that. So I appreciate your throwing your hat into the ring there, especially as one of the original contributors to the ordinance. So thank you for staying up with it. Anybody else have anything else they'd like to discuss? No. All right. So we are going to go on to public hearing items, of which we have none. 7A, which is reports of boards and committees responsible to the council. Brenda, do you have anything for us?
Hello, Brenda Flusy. At this time, no, the tourism committee has not met. So there's nothing to report. We won't be meeting again, I think, until January.
Okay. 7B, reports of town council liaisons. Brenda, do you have anything?
For planning and zoning, I was not able to attend the last planning and zoning meeting, but I believe somebody else may have been there that attended, maybe Tammy?
Yes, I was there.
Land acquisition is meeting next week. Blight committee did not have a meeting, and sustainable CT has not had a meeting. I think that's all of mine.
Okay, Cassandra?
I have nothing to report. PCC did not meet.
Okie dokie. It's gonna go by quick tonight. Steve?
Continuing right along, we've actually had no meetings since the last council meeting, so I have nothing to report at this time.
John?
WPCA did not meet, so nothing from me either.
Boy, we're just cruising. Lou, I know you've got to have something.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. That Birch Grove Building Committee did meet, but Katie is on today to provide her report to the town council, I believe. So I will leave it to her to present during her presentation. Unless you want me to hand it off, take care of it, Katie. You know, give me the thumbs up. Okay, I'll hand it off to her as part of her report. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Kurt.
Can you hear me, Tammy?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm working on getting my camera set up, but only thing I have to report is from the EDC, unless you wanted to talk about them, or
Nope, you go right ahead.
all right. So I have my first EDC meeting. They have a new alternate, Mr. Lavasser, very new to town, and he's getting involved, so it's great to have him on board. And then really what else they talked about, they're gonna have a new chair starting in the new year. And there's also, what's new to me, but it's been discussed before, was the discussion on the Tolland town currency for small businesses, which is a pretty interesting idea. Kind of a big fan of Steve Jones' recommendation to use the old printing press. So hopefully they can get something going with that. But to keep an eye out for that coming in the spring of 2021. So here's hoping that keeps going. So that's all I have.
Thank you. So I had a meeting with the Commission on People with Disabilities, and they reviewed the survey that they're going to be putting out, the current program that they're doing right now to introduce all the members of the committee and reach out to the community. The survey that they're going to be putting out is going to be cross-functional. It's not just going to be Tolland. It's going to be a bunch of other towns too, which in a sense is very helpful to us because we can find allies and partners to work with to get a bigger coalition of people that are going to be requesting things from the state. And the Board of Ed has started their meetings for the budget, their community workshops. I wasn't able to go last night. I think Kurt, you have December, but I don't know if you knew about that one. So
I went.
Brenda, were you there?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Could you help out with that then?
Yes, absolutely. Let me pull up my list. There was about 42, 43 people at the high point for people who attended. About half the meeting, about 45 minutes, was the superintendent going over previous years, budget history, about what the budget process looks like, important dates, and how people can get involved. And then the last half of the meeting was audience participation. So people were able to ask any questions or give any feedback. There was a lot of support for lowering class sizes, for getting an assistant superintendent. And there was a lot of discussion about making sure that we have a competitive and reasonable budget, that our schools are competitive, that that we are sustainable, and that we continue to give an exceptional value for what we spend. So it was very informative, very informal. So it was very comfortable to sit and listen to. It wasn't, a structured meeting. So I encourage other residents to get involved in these kinds of workshops because it's very easy to talk to and give your input. And if you're not comfortable giving your input during the meeting or asking any questions, Dr. Willett has been very approachable and has a number of different ways people can get a hold of him and give their input. So great meeting and a great start to the process.
I don't know if, Brenda, maybe you'll know. I thought the next community meeting they had was in January, but that doesn't make much sense to me because they have their first set of budgets due in January. So I wasn't sure if he announced when the next one was going to be.
Yeah, let me pull up his calendar if I have it here. He has, well.
I think that the website only had like January. That's why I thought.
It has a January 4th one, but there's another workshop I saw on social media that you have to sign up for. No, I guess no, that's the January 4th meeting.
Yeah, I thought the other one was about something about remote learning.
Oh, I don't know that that's a part about, there was one from the Connecticut Education.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, that was.
I'll look and say if I see anything, but as I've said to everybody in the past, the Board of Education, the budget that comes from the schools is 80% of the town budget, and they are our largest town service. So it's important if you can to try to go to, especially the meetings that are going to be happening in December and any community meetings, just so you understand the process that they're going through and the work that they're doing to get to their budget number. It makes it easier when it actually gets to us to be able to formulate your questions and understand the backdrop and just kind of have a what's going on. So if you can find the time to go to the meetings in the month of December, there's one tomorrow. And then I think the next one is the week after. Hold on. Yeah, there's one tomorrow and there's one on the 16th. So if you can pop in, look at their agenda, see about when they'll be talking about it, and that I highly, highly encourage you to go. Thank you, Brenda, for that. And I don't have anything else, but Katie, I see you are on. So since we already hit 7A, the boards that are reportable to the town council, I didn't see you before. Do you want to jump in and give us an update on Birch Grove?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
I'm Katie Murray, 8 Lisa Lane. I'm chair of the Birch Grove Building Committee. The top line report in on this project is that it is running on schedule, perhaps even a week or two ahead of schedule, and on budget. We're hopefully gonna deal with the last big budget hurdle tonight with the agenda item regarding unsuitable soils for that project. Once the unsuitable soil gets taken off the project budget, the building committee will be able to reinstate a number of items that we had previously delayed, including furniture, fixtures and equipment, and technology. We are moving forward at this point on creating the purchasing packets for furniture, fixtures, and technology. And just to give you like a really brief overview, the way that happens is the architect forms a small committee with the school system. So Dr. Willett, the principal of Birch Grove School, as well as a number of teachers and administrators at the school, work together to talk about furniture and technology needs in that school, and then using their expertise of outfitting schools elsewhere in Connecticut, the architect will bring to us as the building committee a large packet of items for us to approve. So that is coming up in the spring. We'll do an approval in January and then be able to select the final items once we have pricing for them all in February or March. So we're really excited about that last kind of really big decision-making sequence that happens for this project, but it is, it's looking really good out there. I was on site at the end of October, walked the site a couple times at the end of October. It looks amazing. One of the things that people might be interested in coming up is within the next 2 or 3 weeks, one room in the school, they're calling it the mock-up room, is going to be pretty much complete. And it is, it's a room that they can use as sort of a resource for the subcontractors to go in and figure out how's it supposed to look. So everything in that room will be complete. The doors, the windows, the paint. It won't have furniture in it, but all the finishings will be in it, the cabinetry, et cetera. And the construction manager told me yesterday that it should be complete in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So that will be the next building committee's walkthrough of the site. And our site walkthroughs are public meetings. So if anybody is just dying to see what the school's going to look like, you might be interested in attending that walkthrough. And the fun part of that is there will be a room, a typical classroom that we'll be able to look at. It will be a kindergarten classroom, but most of the classrooms, except for the specialty classrooms, are very similarly set up. But we've been working with the state. The majority of our time over the past 2 months has been spent addressing change orders. So these are changes to the to things that need to happen while construction is happening. When we started in June, the contingency for change orders was $430,000. That's on the contractor side. And as of last night, the construction contingency is about $415,000. We have authorized approximately $150,000 in additional charges, but we've had a number of credits come through as well. So before the change order we approved last night, we were actually running $5,000 more than we were in June. And I think that's a real credit to the hard work that the contractor, that our owner's rep and the architect are doing to find savings in this project wherever they can. They're also bringing things to us that they think would be a good idea to put a little bit of money in, to do a little bit of investment to ensure that the building will be easiest to maintain going forward. So for example, we did have a change order, which we approved towards the end of October, to put additional tiles on some bathroom walls. In talking with the facilities director of Board of Ed, having tile on the walls as opposed to epoxy paint will ensure that we have more long-term use out of those areas, save the town money essentially in the long run, from maintenance, as well as possibly having to replace some materials. And of course, with an 89% reimbursement rate, it's a very good value for us as a town to invest in these types of changes now, especially with our construction contingency very healthy. So we continue to monitor things like that as they come before us. I think that's pretty much the summary of what's going on. I don't know, Lou, did you think I forgot anything?
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I think that pretty much is very accurate as far as what's been going on. I just want to sort of reiterate something that Katie did say, which is that the board has been really on top of the finances. That there was a very spirited discussion last night on an issue which really that ultimately we're probably going to ratify, but that we just wanted to do our due diligence, make sure that we got the information that we needed to. Board's been really good about that, and the contractor has been really good as far as getting anytime that there's been money that they can refund us. They have. I think that it's come back with about $90,000 in refunds over the past 3 months on various issues. So that's why we've been sort of a lot of give and take. But I would just reiterate everything that Katie said. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you both. I appreciate all the hard work you guys are putting into that. Katie, do you think you can maybe send over to the town council the date of the meeting that you guys have the walkthrough there? So if anybody who wants to go, they can just throw it on their calendar?
Absolutely. I'll make sure that I send that to the town council email. We haven't scheduled it yet, but once we do, I will send an email out to council and town manager Rosen, just so you guys know if anyone wants to join us for the walkthrough. It's always a fun time.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Is there anything else you want to add?
No.
All right. Thank you, Katie. With that then done, we're going to go on to 8.1, discussion of the history of the local tax relief program for permanently disabled and senior residents, the tax freeze ordinance 60. I think Mr. Rubino gave us a pretty good overview. So Jason, I'm sure you're going to give us a lot more detail to kind of go around that.
And I can get us started. So this is Mike Rosen, town manager, and yes, Jason Lawrence, the Tolland tax assessor, is with us tonight. And I also wanted to sort of add my thanks to Mr. Rubino for sort of framing the conversation that between him and Bev, who I believe both worked on this in its first iteration. There's a lot of institutional knowledge in the room. So, you know, even more so than myself, I'd like, you know, perhaps them to weigh in or Bev to weigh in when the time is right. But just to kind of get us going, this is an item that was brought to my attention by Jason about maybe a month or so ago, as this is the time where after the revaluation, this is when it's supposed to be reviewed, the local relief program, or the tax freeze ordinance 60, as was mentioned earlier, which was created about 20 years ago and amended a few times, but most recently, I believe in 2007, as to its entire form. As the materials in your package show, the program's intent was to, you know, do right by the town's most you know, sort of vulnerable population, those that are senior in age or have permanent disabilities, and so that they're not priced out of town, as Mr. Rubino said, to freeze the taxes that for people who no longer could afford to pay the increasing taxes. And it was done in such a way that there was an income limitation, there was you know, an application process, there was oversight on the program. And again, it was age, income, asset, and residency requirements. So every 5 years or so, this is reviewed by the town council. I'm not sure if I don't believe any of the current sitting councilors nor the current sitting town manager have done this process yet. So we're all kind of new to this. So I wanted Jason to kind of come on tonight and lead the discussion, since he's the one who brought it to my attention, and also share some experience he's had in managing this program and some downfalls of the program as it currently stands. And he's going to share an example that I mean, it's just sort of your perfect storm example of variables. This is a program that 183 people in the town are part of this program. And I think Jason might be showing you sort of one of the worst case scenarios tonight. So Jason, if you would, as we discussed, if you want to share your screen and kind of walk us through it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
I'm in my office and my microphone is not the best. So here's the Excel sheet of the entirety of the program that was in your packet. But just to give you a little background on the program, and Bob did a great job of giving you that. This started out as the state program. The state program was phased out back maybe as long ago as 1988. And the people that were in that program would be maybe even into their hundreds by now. So there's not many of those left in the state at all, if any. At that time, when they phased out the program, they allowed towns to adopt a local option or a local ordinance. And Tolland did that in 2000. So at that time, Bob, Bev, my father, Walter, and I think a couple other people got together, formed a committee, and then developed what the program was going to be all about, what the income requirements would be, what the benefits would be, and so on. In 2007, they then revised that program, like Mike said, and to include some other things that probably weren't working so well at the time, some clarifications on income, what counts as income. I think Bob might be able to tell you about that a little bit, but reverse mortgages, I found some notes about would reverse mortgages be included in that income? And also there was an asset test that was then included in the qualifications for the program. So those are some big ticket items that were revised in 2007 and has brought us to where we are today. Part of the way the program is written, it says that the total benefits of the program cannot exceed half of 1% of the current budget. So this spreadsheet that you see here, I just gave you some history of the program going back to the 2009 grand list, where we had 205 participants with a benefit of 167,000, which only works out to 34%. Nowhere close to what the cap is for that year. Over here, I gave you the cap number at 246,601 with a difference of 79,000 with a space there. So we could have some more applicants that either didn't apply, don't have the money, whatever. But the cap was put in place so we wouldn't get a little too crazy with this. And to go back to what Bob was saying, you had this program that was started and they thought that, everybody was going to stick around, or not everybody, but a lot of more people would stick around in town, and it would cause this program to become, capped out. It never happened. I think 205 applicants might be the highest, or 209 there, I see, was probably as high as it ever was. And it's kind of not gone past that because income levels have gone up significantly in town, and there is an income requirement. And also, people move on. You come in, you build this 3,000 square foot home. It doesn't make sense for you 20 years down the road when you get to retirement age or your kids are out of college, whatever. So they've now sold that home and they've moved away. So as many people who are coming into the area, there's been that much turnover. So the population has stayed a little bit younger, and only the people that are really tied to Tolland have stayed and are benefiting from this program. So as you see, as you go through the years here, we get down into 2019, our just most recent grand list. The benefit has declined and we're down to only 26% of the town budget, which would allow for another 136,000. So quite a bit of difference. We could almost double the amount of applicants that we have based on an average of $818 is the tax, the average tax adjustment for people in the program. Some of those are as little as $20, could be in the first year, and some of them are, you know, into the thousands of dollars based on how, if they've been in the program for 20 years since it was originally adopted. Does anybody have any questions on this sheet here?
I'm going to wait till you're done.
Okay. So that's what the council reviewed in 2014. After we did the reval in 2014, I reported what happened, what our percent changes were going to be. And then as a little aside, we talked about this program and where the totals were. It took about 2 minutes to talk about, and everybody kind of seemed to say, okay, that's good. And we moved on. So there was no real review of it in depth. But what I'm about to show you is a problem that have occurred, and it's not on a large scale problem, but it shows you how a problem can happen because there are so many nuances in the program. And this is what caused me to raise the issue with Mike and say, hey, we need to do something about this, because I can't even explain this to some of the participants in the program. And if I can't explain it, how would they ever be able to understand the numbers that move? Now the typical participant in the program doesn't have a lot of changes to their home. They don't have a lot of valuation changes, but this one was just the perfect storm of what can happen when we don't exactly do everything perfectly, and then the computer program that's generating our tax bills doesn't keep up and it gets out of whack. So I brought this to Mike to show, hey, this is what can happen when things get ugly. So I'll get into this, and it gets a little technical. So if anybody wants me to stop and explain anything, please feel free. So this applicant, their first year of application was 2013, and their gross assessment was $171,150. Okay, so that's what their taxes would be based on if nothing else was occurring in the world. I did a correction that year because that CFC stands for Certificate of Correction. They had a crumbling foundation on a portion of their home that was in between their house and their garage. So it was like a sunroom type of area. Well, I went out around the October time and did the inspection, forgot to include it on the grand list. So after the grand list was signed, I did this correction, and it reduced the assessment to $163,850 when we were all said and done. What I've come to find out from the software company that helps us with this is that assessment was never taken into consideration. It always goes back to whatever was filed on the grand list. So right off the bat with this one applicant, we're already in the wrong on what their tax bill is going to come out as. So just to give you an idea of how the benefit works and how we process each one of these, the house, the lot that it sits on, and the outbuildings are what's frozen. Okay, that value is what's frozen at the current tax amount, not their current assessment, but the current tax amount. So we take this number, the 163,100, and we take out this excess land. So you can see that these two fields add together to give you your revised assessment. This excess land happens to be in the 490 program. So 490 is Public Act 490, for those that you might know, is farm, forest, and open space, and it's a reduced program based on the use of the land, not its highest and best use, but its actual use. So if you've applied for this tax shelter program, then the rates that we assess it at are much lower than the current market value. So those two together, and also they're taxed at the current mill rate. So for example, if you were, this total here is going to be taxed at the, say, last year's mill rate. then this 750 an assessment for that excess land is going to be assessed or taxed at the current mill rate. So every year for every property that has excess land, whether it's in the 490 program or not, is going to be taxed at the current mill rate. So that's one of the moving parts that is the beginning of a headache. This person was a veteran, so they had a veteran's exemption. So we're taking $6,000 off of this assessment. Now it's an assessed amount, not an actual tax exemption. That's the assessment exemption. So that times the mill rate is what gives you what the actual tax amount would be reduced to. So this next field here shows their full net assessment. This is their assessment with the excess land on top of it, including the veterans exemption. Let's see. Zoom in my way now. This next field here is their adjusted net assessment, which takes out that excess land amount. So when I do the calculation, it's going to be based on the 157.1 times the current mill rate, gives you what their taxes should be, which I believe is the 5127.91. That's what their taxes should have been that year. You can see here the T-Ben means town benefit. So this starts to get calculated as you start to have a benefit. So in year one, there is no benefit. Taxes are the same as they were last year, and they're just frozen, so zero. CB stands for circuit breaker, which is our elderly program. So this is the other half of that's the state program, in which depending on your income level, you can, and your age, you can apply. And typically, we have people that apply for both programs. So we check their income levels. If they meet the qualifications for the circuit breaker, then we tell them about the freeze program, because the freeze is based on household income and the circuit breaker is based on individual income. So, and that's it used to be reimbursable by the state, but it's not anymore. And that's an actual dollar amount. So all of that said, this is the 4901.24 is what they were actually billed. This is where we get into a little bit of craziness, because I tried to show what they should have been billed down here at the end, and then we can kind of follow along on why it did what it did. So the following year, 4901, they were billed 4176.28 the following year. With the circuit breaker, which means they now their income is low enough they can qualify for the circuit breaker, which is $750 off their tax bill. What the program is supposed to do is look at the previous year's taxes and then determine whether the next year's tax bill is higher or lower. If it's lower, then it takes that as the lower tax amount. If it's higher, it defers back to the old tax amount. And then the only part you add in would be the difference in that excess land rate. So here's that excess land that generates a tax bill of $25. So the difference here would be, let's see, the difference between these two, I'm sorry, is what is that, $1.75? So that's the difference between the taxes that should have been. So from one year, from 4901.24 to 4902.98, that should have been their tax bill before the circuit breaker. The circuit breaker is this $750 state exemption. So with the circuit breaker, it should have gone down to 4152. We taxed them 4176.28. So they actually were overtaxed in year two by $23.30. That's just a product of a lot of moving parts. And of course, this house is a tough example because of the timing of everything. 2014 was also a year of revaluation. So I didn't even get to this part of it yet. So, so this revised assessment here of 163,850 was adjusted to 154,50 based on just an update of value. So that had nothing to do with anything other than we did a revaluation and here's their new assessment. The following year, their assessment jumps again. And this is because I went in and they've now corrected their crumbling foundation. It took them 2 years, but they've now corrected this. So I increased their value from 154 to 163, 150. And that's a product of this reduction from 2 years prior. I can look up all this information, go to the grand lists and pull all that data because we still have it. But when you get going further back, it's some of it has disappeared, and it just makes it really difficult to double check what has happened. One of my points that I brought up to Mike was that this past year, when you guys had passed the mill rate on, I think, a Thursday evening special meeting, and wanted tax bills out the next day, I would have had to have gone through all 183 of these properties and just double check that the math was working properly. Fortunately, the mill rate didn't change, so we did all the math beforehand, and we were able to still process those and then double check only the 12 properties that we knew potentially had, some issues like what we have here, not to this extent, but so when there's a time crunch at the end, and whether we go to a referendum or not with the budget, it becomes very difficult to finish what we're going to do with the grand list and generate tax bills so they can get out on time. I know it's a special year, special situation with COVID and everything. Fortunately, like I said, that mill rate didn't change, and we were able to run all of these numbers prior to your meeting and finalizing the grand list, or the mill rate. If you guys had changed it on that last night, there's no way we would have been able to do what we need to do in time to get bills out. I probably would have taken a week to get that done afterwards. So that's kind of my overview of what's here. I'll open it up so anybody can ask questions.
And Jason, it's Mike. I just wanted, before we go to the council, I just want to, first of all, thank you for sharing and illustrating this example. When you brought this example to me, this was very telling of all the moving parts that makes sense for the town council to consider this when they're, going forward and thinking about if they want to make any changes to this. I just wanted to point out to the council that what we had discussed about that the software vendor that we use is used in 160 of the towns in the state. Basically, it's like the premier software company. So it's not necessarily, it's something that's baked into this software, where the issue is that you have to manually go in and audit as many of them as, ideally all of them, but probably the ones that may have variances on them. So it's a lot of manual oversight on your department to have to keep track of basically all the people that are taking it, the benefit of this program. It's also, I just wanted to note too, that this isn't like we're trying to go back in time and we're not trying to collect this money from the people that have maybe errors. I think we're just trying to fix it and go forward from here, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Jason?
Yeah, just, we've talked to some of these homeowners and let them know that we're looking to just make the correction and be able to explain what happened. So, with this person, I sat down and we did a face-to-face, and I tried to walk through this whole spreadsheet with them. And you can just imagine what it's like if you're not familiar with these, with Excel or something, and try to determine what's going on. Fortunately, this person had all their old tax bills and they could follow along, and they recall me doing an inspection back in 2013, and we talked about it back and forth and worked it out. But in some cases, it's way too much to comprehend for some people. And, when you're talking about dollars and cents, people want you to be able to be exact with it. And this was a lot of work just to do this one spreadsheet, because this all happens behind the scenes. And unless you foresee the problem, there's no way of telling. You know, you can go several years without knowing that it exists, because when we finish some of our forms that we fill out, it was generating one number, and then by the time the tax bill was being created, it was not the same. So I think there's an issue with how it's being calculated in the software, but I also think that it's just so hard to. I mean, I guess somebody, if that was a specialist in this, could do it, but this is just not what we want to see happen, and we don't want to waste a lot of time double checking all the math. And it would be nicer if we could follow some of the other benefits that some of the other towns have done. And I haven't looked into those, but some of them are just straight assessment exemptions. You've been in town for 5 years, you meet the income limits, and it's 5,000 off your assessment, or 10,000 off your assessment, or however you want to do it. But there's just so many ifs and buts in here that it's created a lot of trouble. And at the time of the year when we're trying to get bills out, or just the turnaround isn't just available to us to do that.
So Jason, it's Mike. The ask of the town council here is, now that you've illustrated and shown what could go wrong, and this is just one extreme example, there may be other examples that are also off, but not as off, or et cetera. But the ask of council is to look at how, either by themselves or from some subgroup of council, to study this and perhaps recommend to the full council how to improve it, or make it easier for you, less cumbersome, and perhaps even do, like you said, about doing an assessment freeze rather than a tax freeze. So ultimately, that's what council is going to be considering about whether to create a study committee. Is that good to say?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Just another review, probably like it happened in 2007 when they, somebody said, "Hey, we need to is there a better way to do this?" and double check it, and have some other ideas about it. Because I don't want to be I'm not trying to create policy. I'm just trying to let you know that administering this program has become very difficult.
Okay, we're ready to go to questions. Mike?
Oh, yeah, I have nothing further. There's a couple of people with hands up already.
Okay, so I'm going to go around, let everybody ask their questions, and then I'll ask my questions. And then if none of the other counselors object, if Mr. Rubino would like to chime in on this, I will give leeway for that. So if you do object, let me know. But otherwise, when you want to raise your hand and tell me. Otherwise, I'm just going to go in order for now. Lou?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate, Mike, your summary of as far as what the ask is here, because that was really going to be my main question: is what are you looking for? And just so I understand it, and to sort of reiterate it for my own purposes, is that Jason, you're looking for basically a group to review what's going on here and sort of streamline it. So instead of having, like you said, basing it on exemption rather than on various tax breaks, is that essentially what you're looking for?
I mean that, or just the best route to go. I mean, I don't want to make less work for myself just because I don't want to do the work. I really want the program to continue, and at the level it's continuing at. But I think just all the nuances are a little much to keep track of, and maybe if this never had a problem we wouldn't have to be here, and we would just be looking at the totals and be done. But there's too much room for error here, I think.
Okay, and then just following on that, rather than having this be on a town council level, could this be on an executive level, like with Mike having Jason head up a group to at least study this, take a look, and then present the town council with various proposals, saying, here are after reviewing this, because we're not the experts in this, and for us to learn all the nuances of what's going on here, we'd be recreating the wheel. And with Jason and having a few people that actually know what's going on here, making some recommendations and saying, here's our top 3 courses of action that we would recommend. And then that's something that at least that we as a town council could take a look at and decide, okay, yes, that these are things that are worth considering, or no, that we would rather have a town council committee formulated to look at this. So rather than us forming a committee right off the bat, is this something that can be done on a town manager executive level, having head up by Jason, and then make the recommendations and come back to us? That's just my thought on it, rather than starting from square one, recreating the wheel when you already have people that know what's going on and know some of the issues.
Lou, I can take a crack at trying to answer that. So it's Mike Rosen, town manager. I believe it's written into the program that the council is the body that reviews this, and Jason can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I would agree that perhaps we could tackle this, on the staff level, excuse me. I'm okay with the idea. I don't know if Jason's agrees with me on that, but just we're trying to follow what the program has been established, and that's the way it was done. I think back 10 years ago, 12 years ago, was some subset of council and a few staff people.
Yeah, and understood. I'm just saying that rather than starting off right there, having at least the staff start off, make some recommendations, then bring it to the council, and then we could go from there. So it'll still be a council action, but it'll be with recommendations so that we can start from have a good starting point. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Lou. Steve?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Steve Jones. Just a few questions. I know you mentioned that this software is utilized by 160 towns. I'm curious if they're aware of the issues we've been facing, or if other towns face similar issues with their reporting. I know there are very few that have a similar program like ours, but I don't know if Jason, if you know of any other towns that had issues with utilizing their software, and or if this is a very distinctly Tolland issue.
Thanks, Steve. This spreadsheet is an extract from their software that they provided to me. So what they gave me was a breakdown of every applicant, and going all the way back to 2000. We extracted the data from that spreadsheet, and then I went in and filled out all the information based on our mill rates and made sense out of it for what should have been versus what happened. When I talked to the company, they said that not all towns in the state have adopted local freezes, but they all have some variation. A lot of towns have variations of the freeze program, and some of them have failed, some of them have continued on. But the simplest ones are the ones that have prevailed, because people just, you just get tied down in the minutia of all this stuff. But some of the problems they say stem from the original freeze program the state had, which was a freeze of assessment. And when the towns ran with it, it wasn't meant to be a freeze of taxes. It was meant to, but I understand the theory behind freeze of taxes, because you don't want their taxes to go up. If you only freeze the assessment, your taxes go up every year when the mill rate goes up, and you only benefit from that freeze once every 5 years when there's a revaluation. And back in 2000, revals were only once every 10 years. So it doesn't make any sense, really. But to say, I can't really speak to other towns and whether they've had software issues, but obviously the simpler it is, the easier it would be for them to write a program that, exactly mimics each town that, has adopted some type of program.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Going forward with the applicants, you said there's 181 or 183, and we could have up to 166 additional, at least based on the current program. How are residents notified, both in terms of being potentially new applicants as well as reapplication? I saw from the policy that it's from February 1st to May 15th. Is that sort of like an e-blast or communication for new residents through the e-blast system, and through current residents, are they contacted more directly? Or not current residents, but current enrollees?
It's on the website. We do put it out in the e-blast. It goes out in the newsletter that Rec puts out just prior to the season of application period. So usually goes out in the spring, let everybody know that, what the application period is. I know Bev pushes it and down in her office, and also the senior center pushes it. And a lot of times we work with the senior center to make sure that everybody who's supposed to file has filed. And they're usually our contact for some of the people say, hey, where is this person? Are they in a nursing home now? Are they still at home? What's the case? This past year, people did not have to apply because of COVID. So anybody it was there, because it's every other year that you apply for this. And if you qualified 2 years ago, and this is your year to apply, then we automatically passed all those people through. So and just to touch on it for a second, that is one of the cons of the program. If you are over income one year, you start over. So we've written that into, the way that this is administered years ago. If you're over income, so somebody who couldn't afford to do a roof or have a roof fixed, they've now taken $10,000 out of their 401k, pension, whatever they have. That puts them over income for 1 year. And now if they've been in since 2000, they could lose, potentially their $2,000 tax break a year. And then we're starting over. So that might be something that if we can form a committee, that's something we look at as if it's a 1 year forgiveness of something like that. So people wouldn't have to fall out of that program. A roof might be very important. So you could stay in the house, never mind. Now you're out of that program, and now that it's going to cost you $2,000 more. And, I would hate for that to be the reason why you wouldn't redo a roof or, something along those lines.
Yeah, especially in terms of, energy efficiency and even just the value of a home. If you were to move at any point, an inspector would come in and say, okay, well, this roof is on its way out. You might want to ask for a new roof in your closing. Or just in general for safety reasons, a homeowner that wants to stay there doesn't want to live under a falling or failing roof. But that actually kind of leads into one of my next questions regarding the review process that's outlined in, I think, 136.30.1. For persons aggrieved, it looks like the process that goes through a determination by the town manager by filing a written request. I was wondering, Jason, have you ever experienced this sort of aggrieved, appeal process in your time, or are you aware when your father was working of any of that appeal process and why it wasn't put through to the Board of Assessment Appeals to review that process? And I don't know if Bob Rubino would be able to answer that as well in terms of the language of it being handled by the town manager versus the Board of Assessment Appeals.
Well, I think the reason why it's written up that way is because the board doesn't meet until well after the fact. So the bill would be generated and you would want that to be, if the deadline is May 15th, then, tax bills are coming out in 2 months. You really need to have this acted on before they would meet. They wouldn't meet until the following February, March. So that's not, it's just the timing of that. And to answer the first part of that question is, we have had one person while I've been here for 8 years that had to go to Steve Werbner and ask, and it was basically because they had filed late. We had tried to reach them. I don't recall if they were in a nursing home or what the case was, but we didn't get it. So they went to Steve and asked for, basically an extension on the date to file, even though we were already well after it. And he accepted that. I'm just following the rules. This is their way to be able to get back in the program, and they did.
No, that's fair. And if the council were to consider a subcommittee or a committee that was made up of residents, yourself, and maybe a council member as an ex officio or liaison, what would you find to be the ideal timeline to have a process reviewed and presented back to the council for revisions to this ordinance?
Well, I think I could reach out immediately to my association and get a feeling of what some of the other freeze programs are like out there. we did this a few years ago, and most people are like, oh, how much time do you have? So they are pretty involved, and everybody has had a little bit of a twist on it. So that's what's made it a hard job for our administrative vendor to handle all of these. But I think if we got right on it, and in a couple months' time, considering this is the worst time of year right now for me, we could have something, at least some options meet. I could share what the pros and cons are, where the program falls down a little bit, and maybe what are some options to make some changes to the benefits. Also, run some scenarios by of what that would look like. So if you did say somebody, they meet the income requirements, they've been in town for a year, you start them off at a $5,000 exemption, and then every year they get another $1,000 exemption until a certain point, 20,000 they max out at, or something like that, which ends up being, I don't know, eight up to that like $800 tax benefit that we have now as our average. So I don't know. I mean, it's not for me to say what it should be. I don't want to give anybody less than what they're already getting. So I think that's where you have to run some scenarios by okay, that sounds good, but how does that shake out? And is that similar to what they get now? Because I don't think that we're nowhere near what the cap is for what Bob and Bev and the original people set out to do. So I think we already afford that. The town is affording this number, so I'm not looking to reduce that at all. Just have it run cleaner. And if we can find a scenario that does that, that would be great.
Well, that sounds good. I was just assuming probably if it were a 6 to 12 month period, that seemed like a reasonable amount of time to both establish a number of individuals as well as get through the meeting process. I don't know how often you'd be able to meet, or if certain months would be very difficult to meet. So if we were to establish a committee, I just want to make sure you guys have, if we set it as a temporary task force or a group that is only temporary, that we give you an appropriate amount of time. I'll just do one final question. I have a few others, but I'll wait for everybody to go around. But if I missed it, I apologize. Under the example tab, what did TBEN stand for?
Town benefit.
Was it just town benefit?
Town benefit. It was
Oh,
the
town
town
benefit.
piece, like what they
Okay.
saved from just the town ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah, so this number is this is the number that is calculated internally in the administrative system that makes sure that we don't exceed that half of 1% of the budget. So this number is calculated for the purpose of making sure that we don't go over that total and max out the program.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That covers my questions for now.
Steve, it's Mike. I just wanted to add on to your previous question. I tried
No.
to raise my hand. So Jason and I kind of, we worked through the example of the exercise of trying to figure out earlier today when we would be able to have a decision by on this. And if the answer is we try to back it out from the budget process. So if we were trying to do it for the coming year's budget, generally the application period is February through May, which doesn't give us a lot of time between now and February to make a decision and bring it to council. I think this 2021 is the year we normally would be looking at this and putting out the application again. But what Jason had told me was that the last time that this was a subcommittee was formed, they generally met pretty fast and furious for a few months, like 10 to 12 meetings over the span of about 3 months. And then ultimately it goes to council and has to be a public hearing because it's amending an ordinance. So backing it out from, we used May because that was the referendum, but I guess we really should have been using like March or February. So we don't really have a lot of time to implement any changes between now and when the application period would normally go live. So I don't know, Jason, if that, can we wait till next year to make any amendments to it, or does it have to be this 2021 that we're doing that?
No, I think it's okay to stretch it out to the following grant list year. I don't see any reason there's a rush to do it. If you want to do it right and you want everybody to kind of weigh in on it, then I think at that point you could devise something that everybody could agree on, and you're not rushing to the table to do something.
No, I appreciate that. That's kind of the point I was getting to towards the 6 to 12 month period as sort of a rough outline, is that allowing some deliberation, some good public input and committee input, whoever's in that group if it's established, but also making sure that we don't miss anything or any big changes. But I didn't want it to be drawn out too long if this was a high need issue and we needed to take more swift action on it. So that covers a lot of my concerns and questions. Thank you.
Okay, Brenda.
Hi, thank you. Brenda Felucci. I had a couple questions, couple comments. The first one is under the first section E. It lists that we're basing this on the low median income in Hartford County. Last time I checked, we were in Tolland County. Was there a reason why we picked Hartford County that you know of? I mean, this is so historical, you might not know.
Brenda, I can answer that question, Beverly, if that's okay. We're using the same housing rehab guidelines we use, and they deem us in the Hartford County, even though we're in Tolland. They take those numbers. So it's kind of basing on housing stock and everything else. That's where that number came from.
Thank you. That was just out of curiosity there. Thank you. I had some of the same questions that Steve had about advertising. This is a very important program for obviously many residents, and I'd like to be able to make sure that we're reaching everybody we can. I'm hoping that we can find some other ways to reach out to residents. I know we also did a press release one year too, hoping that the newspapers would pick up on it and send that information out. But I'd like to be able to see us max, ensure that we're reaching everybody that can. I like the idea of going out and looking at seeing what other people are doing, or what other towns are doing, and taking a look at a comparison and ensuring that, whatever we do pick does not end up negatively impacting anybody that's already in the program. I don't want to, start changing people's benefits because something is easier to do. And I'm positive you guys would look at that anyway to make sure that happens. I also liked the fact that you would take a look at forgiveness for a one-year fallout, like you were talking about the example of the improvements. And I was wondering if we were going to also consider taking a look at doing an increase in the income amount based on inflation. I don't know if we've done any adjustments previously to take a look at, I'm sorry, I had it written down somewhere what the maximum income was, but inflation makes changes. So I was hoping that we could take a look at that too as we're moving forward. And I think Steve asked all the other questions I had. So, and I am also in favor of having Mr. Rubino adding some comments in some historical facts if he has anything to add. And I'm in favor of having a committee to look at this, whether it's done in the town side and it comes before the town council, or having one town council person sit in on the meetings. Either is acceptable to me.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything? My dogs are going to bark because somebody's at the door or coming. So, excuse me. Jason, I have a bunch of questions on the, let's see. I guess, can you just maybe give me a little bit of understanding here between the freeze in assessment and the freeze in taxes? I would think that the purpose of the ordinance, and please somebody correct me if I'm wrong, is that their taxes were frozen at one level And then of course, if there's improvements to the home or something, that would be taken into account, but that it wouldn't be, like they wouldn't pay higher taxes than they did at the time that they got into the program. So can somebody please just define for me the difference between a freeze and assessment and the freeze of taxes?
Well, the way that we're administering the program now is if, say, your house is worth $150,000 in assessed value, and you added a deck for $10,000, then we would go in and add that assessment of just the deck portion to your frozen assessment. So
Right.
it's supposed to increase only the increment in which you increase the property. If we don't manually do that change, then it steamrolls into a big problem like what we have here. In this case, it happened to be a correction that we did for a negative, but typically it would be a positive. And what would have happened with this program is that $10,000 would have kept rolling over and over and over, and their taxes would have increased every year. Of course, that would have raised concerns from the taxpayer. They would have come in and said, why are my taxes going up every year? They're supposed to be frozen. Well, when they go down, some people tend to not ask so many questions.
Well, yeah, so
So-
I guess that's why I'm looking at the actual billed amount looked like it was steadily going down until this last year, the 5,000. But I guess that's I'm looking at then the elderly before the circuit breaker, or the elderly with the circuit breaker.
Yeah.
Those numbers, there's a lot of variance in there. Between the 4,900 and the 51, then going up to the 52, and we're back to the 52 down below and the 51 again. So, and then you're looking at column AG, which should have been with the circuit breaker, and I can't make any of the numbers tied to that. So maybe we can just talk about offline what calculations you were using to get to that number. But
Okay.
I guess what I'm struggling with here is the intent of the ordinance is that the taxes freeze when you get into this program, right? So in my mind, that would mean you would stay at that, in this case, $4,900 regardless. But I guess I can understand where a reval would come in and adjust that.
Yep,
Is that
the program says if through a revaluation, if the value is lower or your tax bill is now going to be lower, you would use that value. That reestablishes your new base tax amount.
So
So
that's
in
the
this,
4176 here. Reval, it came
Right.
in.
Right.
So that's the new threshold for the high at that point.
but also what happened was they then qualified for the circuit breaker, which is the state program. So they got $750 off their tax bill automatically for that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a reduction because I think their assessment went up did it go up that year? Okay, so their assessment in 14 was the reval. It went down.
It went down.
It went down. Then they, so his veteran exemption stayed the same. But then they picked up the circuit breaker. So between the mill rate adjustment, 3105 to 3336, their taxes probably pretty easily wiped out that 750 that they got. So when you do the calculation, the 4176 is what the taxes came out to be. And after we did I'm not exactly sure where this came from, but when I did the math the way it should have been, we actually overtaxed them that year. The following year, we brought in their assessment went up because of the change, because of this correction. This correction was of a reduction was now added back into the assessment. And then their veteran exemption doubled. So as you get over to the end here. So this 4,056 should have never come down. The increased assessment should have become the new base tax amount. And this 5167 prior to the circuit breaker should have been the their new tax bill. Then you subtract out the circuit breaker, and it comes down to 4417. The difference between the 4417 and the 4056 is what they are actually billed, is this difference here, the 361. So everything kind of fell apart with this property because that correction in year one was never brought to, was never the number they were using as the base. And that's because the way that the program was written it only took whatever was on the grand list. So this correction that you see that, hold on, I'm stuck on that. This correction of 7,300 doesn't show up on the grand list because it was done at some point after I filed the grand list January 31st. So when they initially calculate these numbers for the tax bill, they look at this number here. They're not looking at this number, which it should have done. Typically, we're not reducing an assessment. So this was an error that happened. We're only reducing assessments through the Board of Appeals. And when we do the assessments through the Board of Appeals, that's what gets printed in the grand list book. And that's the number that should have been used for this program. So from day one, it started off with the wrong number, but then all these other calculations that come in and keep changing weren't accurate either. So even when the assessment went back up to accommodate for this reduction, it never reestablished a new base because it didn't know that was an improvement. Somehow the system didn't know that was an improvement. So it still said, oh, this number is less than what was last year. So we're going to use that number. So it used the 44, I believe it used this, I'm sorry, we're over here, the 4056 because it looked at this number and it said, oh, it's less. So we're going to use that, but it should have been generating the tax bill of this based on the increased assessment because it's an improvement. It's an improvement to that property. So we gave them a reduction for a certain number of years while they were fixing their problem. And then now the house has been improved. The way the program works is you're supposed to now add that 10,000 back in, and that would have created a new base tax amount. It didn't happen. So with that not happening, all the rest of these numbers are now off after this point. So realistically, I mean, it was only not even accurate this year in 2014, but that was as close as it was going to be. And then all these other years, it just snowballed into, even worse.
Okay, so the software company is not only looks at the grand list, and we don't want to change that. We want to keep it that way because this is standard software that's used in multiple municipalities, and this is kind of how they do it, correct, Mike?
Jason had shared with me that this is seen as sort of the vendor for this service. I don't know if alternatives have been looked into, but I don't think we're looking to change at the moment. Right, I would defer that to Jason though.
Okay, and excess land, the 490 program, you said that's open space or farmland?
Right.
And that's taxed at a lower rate, correct?
The values are lower, but it's still taxed at the same mill rate.
Okay, so the excess land that is valued lower,
Right.
but taxed at the current rate.
Yeah. So that 750 is the actual assessment of, say, 10 acres of land. Normally, your assessment for 10 acres of land is $6,000 per acre. And then depending on topography and neighborhood, it would be adjusted from there. So you can see what the open space, I think it's open space in this house in particular, the value does to help you with your taxes.
Okay. Don't worry me, I'm just taking notes. All right, the town benefit, you said the limits on that are a household total amount and the circuit breaker is an individual income amount for qualification?
Yeah, circuit breaker is individual. Well, there's two different ways. You can file for single or married, and then your income levels depend on what you are. The freeze is household income. So if you got grandsons living with you or whoever, their income is supposed to be included in your household income for the program. And the cap on that is higher than the normal income levels by like roughly 20,000. I don't know what the number is, but the income level for 2019 for the freeze was 60,400 household.
Okay. So if it's a lower rate, if it's lower, you pay the prior year amount. So would it be easier for us to look at this based off of, you just freeze the mill rate?
The problem, I think, that's kind of what you're doing. It's kind of what we're doing here. We're calculating the tax amount and then saying, okay, if last year was less, then we're going to use last year. The problem, the caveat is, okay, that's true, but then we need to add in the tax amount that's generated by the excess land. And with the way we've written that in is to say we use the current mill rate times that excess land. So you can see from one year to the next, it's only going up $2. It's not even, cents. This is going up every year based on a change in the mill rate, not a change in the value, not until you get to the reval year here. And you've actually seen a $5 increase in that land tax amount. So it's just another level of, and I think that was created because they didn't want people that had a lot of land say, I can't afford my taxes, but I've got 100 acres out back that I don't want to part with any of it, or don't want to sell some of it off so I can afford to pay the increasing taxes amount. So if they're not already in this program, the 490 program, whether it's open space or farm or forest, then I would definitely mention to them that they need to apply for that if they meet the requirements for that program. So their tax bill is pennies compared to what it would be if you're holding on to even 20 acres or something at full value. So.
Okay, Mike, maybe this one's a question for you, but what happens if we got more applicants than the 0.5%?
That's a good question. I don't know what would honestly, maybe Jason.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. Yeah, if you exceed that level, then a lien is applied to the property, or you divvy out the difference to make sure that you stay under that level. So we would prorate everybody's tax bill by whatever we needed to do to get under that cap. Which is
to everyone that's applied or to everyone else?
No, everybody that's in the program. So because it can't exceed, so say let's go back to that other example of the freeze here. So in 2019, if our benefit was 290,000, say, we would have to split $5,000 between 183 people. So we would have to alter everybody's tax bills or apply a lien to each one of those properties, which we don't want to do. If we go over, we would just have to adjust it. The problem is there's no time to do any of that stuff. Once you've determined your mill rate, now you want to get those tax bills out as soon as you could. It would be a nightmare to try to put liens on 183 properties when you could essentially fix the problem before it happened by just amortizing out the difference to all the properties.
Okay, and you said the income requirement is based off of Hartford County. And in 2019, it was 60,400 per household.
Right.
And what is the asset requirement?
The asset test is 10 times that. So aside from your house, lot, and I think that's it. House and lot, outside of that, you can't have. So if you had a lot of excess land, it couldn't be valued more than 10 times that income requirement. So you can have the value of your home in the lot that it sits on aren't in the calculation. Also motor vehicles. So whatever cars you have, like, you got your Ford pickup and your house and the lot, that doesn't count towards the asset test. Everything beyond that does. So if you own a second house, or if you have 30 acres or something of land outside the house lot and you know, the minor improvements, then that's what we would look at. Only once, I think, talking to Kathy in my office, did we ever have to tell somebody no, they didn't meet the asset test.
Okay. Bev, do you happen to know the Hartford County numbers? Are they based off state or federal income levels?
It's HUD numbers.
They're
It's
HUD, so that's federal.
Metro area. And those are the same numbers that we use for our housing rehab. We were trying to pick a income guideline that was kind of consistent with the housing programs. And it actually tends to have a little bit of a higher amount than some of the other income programs. I can forward the copy of the income standards to Mike tomorrow.
That'd be great. So Jason, so how many people have we had apply that do not qualify? You just said we've only had one from the asset thing. Do we have many other people who apply that don't qualify for the program?
Yeah, I would say there's a handful a year. After we do their income test, we have them usually just submit their income taxes, and that gives us everything we need to know. We check it against what the requirements are, and like I said earlier, if they meet the requirements for the circuit breaker, the state program, then we let them know that they also qualify for the freeze program and enroll them at the same time into both programs.
Okay. So you had mentioned mirroring other towns' programs. So I guess in this review, we would be looking at a couple different towns' programs to see which ones we want to kind of cherry pick from. Is that what you're envisioning here? Us reviewing what other towns are doing and coming up with kind of like a best practices?
Yeah, I think, you know, you can follow what other towns do, but because we already have a program in place, we need to then set the level based on what we're already adjusting, whatever the benefit is. So obviously you don't want to say, okay, it's $1,000 in assessment per year that you're here over 5 years, because that might be only $100 exemption and or adjustment, and they're already getting $600, or, you know, so we'd have to test it against what we currently have. But I would like to look at some other towns and just see what they've done, see how it works, and see how, if they've been able to administer it easily. It doesn't have to be completely easy, but it just, you can see all the hoops and that we have to jump through just to perform a reduction, which of course I don't like to do, but you know, it's part of the job.
Okay. So my general overall feedback is I would like to understand what other towns are doing, if there's a simplified way for us to do this, but my intent would be that we are not making this any more restrictive than it already is. Actually, I'm trying to work with people at the Capitol legislatively to find a way to put in a sliding scale for programs like these rather than a drop ledge at the 60,000. What was it, 60,420? I would rather see it be kind of at 60,400, you'd get 100%. And then at a couple other intervals out, you'd get at least a partial part of the program. So making it more restrictive would definitely not be something that I would be in favor of. But I am looking at your Excel spreadsheet, and I don't know if it's if you do it in Excel or if you're just validating it in Excel, but I can say there are definitely some tricks of the trade that you could just pop in a number and it would flow through all the formulas and calculations and spit out for you at the end, but it takes a little bit of programming and somebody who has some depth of Excel knowledge. But I don't think you're doing all of it in Excel, right? Just these handful, these 12?
Yeah, it was just, you know, when Bob actually took my Excel, Rubino, took my Excel spreadsheet and ran with it, and he has sent me something that's nice and pretty. And I haven't really had a chance to look it over, but we don't do it that way. We don't do it manually. It's just, the information is in the system. It's getting the system to work right. And there is a bit of communication breakdown with the company that we work with. And they're so good with everything else they do. I would never want to say anything bad about this. It's just, I think, at the root of the problem is that there's so many moving parts. And for something that we're trying to give to people, and I'm not against giving them anything or giving them more even. I just want it to be something that I don't spend months on. It's just crazy. And I agree. What you see in this example is just a data pull from our software, and a lot of the fields are missing because they're hidden behind other tabs here. So I tried to do it the best I could between the million other things that we have to do here in our office, and knew that it was a problem, but it was a problem that's been kind of kicked down the road for a while. So eventually it just, we had to do something about it. So this was my attempt at showing how bad a problem can be, and getting it out there. And I'm sure somebody else could do it a little bit more clear so you could see it. But this example shows that there's a lot of moving parts. Not everybody has a veterans exemption. Not everybody has, they might not even have the circuit breaker. They might not meet that requirement, but they do get the freeze. So those are simple ones. There's no problem with those. But when you have these kind of issues and changes, it happens. And realistically, I think is more of a key punch error and a lack of follow through on some of these changes that they just weren't implemented in the system. And it steamrolled into this big problem. But it was on a minor level, considering there's 183 applicants and we only have maybe 12 problems, and none of them are as extensive as this one. But that's about all I got.
It's all right. I think that's all that I have right now. I have to look back through my notes. I took a lot of notes on that. So Steve, your hand is up.
Yeah, I just had one other question that I forgot. Sorry if it's already been asked, but for section, it looks like 136-28 for error correction, would this particular account issue or any of the other 12 have fallen under that subsection C in regards to if there's been an underpayment of taxes due to this program in situations other than intentional misrepresentation or in reporting of any change of circumstances or fraud? It looked like kind of a brief tertiary read that maybe if there were issues of reporting or clerical error in the town's part, that there was a process to reclaim those funds. But obviously in this case, we don't really want to go after people for these errors, but would these and other errors that you found have fallen under this section for remediation?
Want me to answer that?
Well, yeah, unless I answered it wrong before, because I know I mentioned that I didn't think that we were going to go after anybody. So I mean,
yeah, no, and I don't want to either. I was just curious if this is actually an appropriate stopgap, or if in the process of reading the policy, if this should be refined or reworded in a way that provides leniency to the homeowner.
Yeah, I think this effectively is going to establish a new baseline, hopefully without further error. So we're trying to remove the errors from the scenario. And Jason and I had spoken a few weeks ago when this first came up, and I think I had the similar question, Steve. And I don't believe the intent here is to try to change any in either direction. We just want to establish a new baseline in the coming year.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mike.
Mr. Rubino, do you have anything you want to add to the conversation here?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to go too deep into the weeds, but just a couple of overarching observations. Recall that the original intent was to help those most in need, and that back 2 decades ago, that was just a broad brush, the bottom third of the senior households, which was about 200. And looking at Jason's numbers, so in 2009, you had 205 participants. In 2019, 183. That suggests that this particular demographic is the only one that's growing in Tolland. So that says to me that our original charge is not being met because the program is out of sync. Principally, I would suspect in that the income threshold is too low.
Yeah.
The 54,400, okay, we're setting it, we're trying to anchor it to something that's defensible. Originally, it was set at 3 times the federal poverty level, just to have a number. So if this program were up for review, and I think the language says at reval it is, then I think it's within the purview of the council to do something as simple as a COLA adjustment on the 54,400 and say, well, cost of living in 5 years has actually gone up 8%. And you could bump the qualifying income up to something like 58,000. So rather than 200 households, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I believe there is something greater than 700 households that are seniors in town. So if you wanted to get to 250 participants on a program that's nominally capped at 250K, that's max benefit of about $1K per participating household. So that would be the most straightforward way to get there. And you could do that immediately. Maybe the last observation, and one that I hadn't anticipated 20 years ago, listening to Jason, is that by making the program a function of the mill rate, the total cost of the program is kind of like a circular do loop. When you guys are setting the mill rate, you don't really know the impact that you're going to be putting into this program, how much money you're going to be losing based on the mill rate. Now, fortunately, the mill rate has been relatively flat. But the other aspect of this program, recall in my introductory comments, was to address 2 things. And Madam Chair, I think you were touching on one of them. One of them is the value of the home. Now, for the past 10 years, real estate market in Tolland has been relatively flat. If anything, has gone down. But of late, the real estate market's pretty hot. We're seeing a lot of people, there's an exodus out of the cities into the suburbs, driving home values up. And I'm a little worried that our elderly are going to see another squeeze, not just by taxes from the mill rate side, but the value of their home. And that was the other element of the 90s that we were trying to address. So if I were to sit on this, this study committee, one of the things I would attempt to do is present to the council a couple of different options that the focus would be to provide transparency or a very deterministic way of knowing exactly what the program is going to cost you. So when you are deliberating mill rate, a simple click of a button will produce the program cost. And the other aspect of this is the participants need to know what they're looking at. And as Jason said, if he can't explain it to the participant, well, then we're kind of doomed. So those are the things I would bring focus to. Thanks.
Sorry, I'm talking away and I'm on mute. Thank you very much. I appreciate that feedback. So, Mike, what do you need from us tonight on this?
So we wanted to introduce this tonight as a new business item. No formal action is expected tonight. We just wanted to have this discussion, which was just had. I think the intent is we would want to bring this back to an agenda, probably. I don't know if we can do it for the next meeting, but perhaps the subsequent meeting, to decide or have the council mull it over and consider whether they would like to create this study task force, study committee, whatever you want to call it, and what its composition might look like. We, obviously can use the last time that we did this, we could pull that information and use that as a skeleton benchmark of, what we did 5 to 10 years ago.
To have a viable conversation on moving forward with next steps at the at either the next or the one after. One of the two coming up.
I agree, and I think I will work behind the scenes with Jason and perhaps finance as well to talk about what this looks like and what other towns may, if Jason has maybe an assessor's distribution list that we can poll like we do with the managers for things.
I can
we
look
may
up
wanna
all
reach
this
out and see what
information and
other
go
towns do for this.
follow through once.
I know
like to
in my
create this study
research
task
that
force,
I've been
study
looking
committee,
at
whatever you
for
wanna call
senior
it, and what its
for senior
composition
tax-free
might look
programs
like.
and that. I read that there, like Jason had said, there are a significant amount of towns that have them, whether or not they're actually functioning or defunct or whatever. There are a significant amount of towns that have them on their books. I don't know that necessarily helps us. I would think we don't want to go crazy. Just look for successful programs that have good working, an idea of how to work it. And then we can kind of go from a narrow scope out if we have to, rather than trying to wrangle 140 towns. Would you agree, Jason?
I think it's going to be tough to get a lot of participation right now, considering where the assessor's world is. We're finishing up motor vehicle supplemental grand lists. We're preparing personal property valuation. I just got the 2020 motor vehicle grand list released today. So
yeah,
an ask of those of my all my friends might fall on deaf ears for a quick turnaround. So
I don't think it's fair for us or you or any of us to expect a quick turnaround on this, Mike, if I remember correctly, from what you just said, there's no way we're going to be able to implement this for this tax cycle right now anyway. So there's no sense in us going at breakneck speed. We have a program that, while complicated, is working, that we hopefully can revamp a little bit to make it, more accessible, easier for the assessor's office, more something that will work better with the software that we have. But I don't think we have to go at breakneck speed right now to try to get something done for you if we're not going to be able to implement it with this next budget process. So if you're good with that, then Jason, I want to be respectful of your time and the time of the other assessors. If you guys can provide the background info that Bev has, and again, like anything that you have for us to start reviewing and look at, then I think we can table this to like one of the upcoming meetings, Mike, that we can get it in after you guys have had ample amount of time to gather, and then we can go from there.
sounds good.
Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, Jason, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Your spreadsheet is darling. All right, that gets us to, and thank you, Mr. Rubino, again, for coming on and giving us some history, and Bev, you too, for being our historical knowledge on that. I appreciate it.
Definitely.
8.2, consideration of a resolution to declare equipment as surplus property within the town.
Okay, hi everybody, Mike Rosen, town manager. So this is sort of one of council's formalities that we have to do from time to time. So in our policy concerning disposal of surplus public property, because this property has little to no value, we do put it out to auction, and we use a vendor to do that. They're called Gov Deals. And what's before you tonight was proposed by the public safety director to surplus this equipment, which is steel frame trailer. This is probably the best way I can describe it quickly. It's a carrier that includes a platform with a drawer and some cooler drawers with an insulated function to it. So basically the public safety director reached out to me and asked that if we can maybe get some cash for this, some value, it's, not going to be a lot. It's not going to, solve the budget problems, but it's going to give us some money. So we drafted the resolution for your review tonight that this equipment be declared surplus and be disposed of in accordance with our policy. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on this? It's pretty straightforward. If not, then Steve.
All right, Chairman Nuccio, I entertain a motion that be it resolved that the following attached list of equipment is hereby declared surplus and may be disposed of in accordance with policy A 176-4, policy concerning disposal of surplus personal public property, approved by the Tolland Town Council on December 8th, 2020.
Thank you.
Lou, I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Brenda?
Aye.
Cassandra?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
I'm an aye, so that passes unanimously, Lisa. Thank you. That gets us to 8.3, consideration of a resolution modifying the scope of the Birch Grove Primary School project and authorizing an appropriation of $1,869,941 for the excavation and replacement of soil, the replacement of soil and the financing of said entire appropriations by the state grants and setting of a public hearing thereon for December 22nd, 2020. So we are just setting the public hearing on this. If we have any primary discussion that we need before that hearing, we can do that. But
Yes, thank you. This Mike Rosen again. So this item, like you said, Madam Chair, two things. We wanted to introduce it into the record and set the public hearing for our next regular meeting so that we can advertise it for that meeting. This is, and I also want to acknowledge that Bev and Katie are still on the line. Thank you both for still being here for this in case there's any preliminary questions. But this is the code violation issue, or informally, it's the unsuitable soil issue that we're all well versed in from the summertime. Again, this is, through special legislation, and we thank the state for that it's going to be 100% reimbursement rate for this. The work on this project has already been performed. So in theory, what we're doing, the public hearing next time will be to basically accept that the scope of the Birch Grove project is modified to remove the unsuitable soil issue from the main project and make it its own project at a fully fundable reimbursement rate of 100%, and thereby, freeing up the projects that were deferred from the main project to come back into the main project, basically making the project whole from where it was prior to the problem being identified. So a lot of mechanics went into this. And again, we just want to appreciate the state for coming through for us at the 100% reimbursable rate for this unforeseen expense.
okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? No? All right, Steve?
All right, Madam Chair, I'd entertain a motion that the following resolution as outlined in 8.3 be introduced and set down for public hearing on December 22nd, 2020 at 7 p.m. via Zoom remote meeting.
This is Brenda Felucci, I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Brenda?
Aye.
Cassandra?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
I'm an aye, so that passes unanimously. Sorry, I see you guys all in my head in our chairs, and I try to go around, and every now and then, I stumble. So that one passes unanimously. Also, that gets us to 8.4, appointments to vacancies on various municipal boards and commissions.
Hi, so again, Mike Rosen speaking. So we have a couple of appointments tonight, actually. One I would just sort of like to introduce for a moment. So I've talked about it at a few council meetings now, and we had a presentation a few months ago, feels like forever ago, about the four-town vitality study, which was performed by the organization Advanced CT, which was formerly known as CIRC. And what yielded from that plan was that best practice would be to have an implementation steering committee be formed of representatives from each of the four towns, Bolton, Mansfield, Coventry, and Tolland. there was no guidelines about whom to appoint from each of the 4 municipalities, but I had reached out to 2 important arms of the town, which are economic development and conservation, which both fall under the umbrella of what this plan is looking to, further for all of the 4 towns to kind of create a regional brand and identity. And it just so happens that the chair of Conservation Commission, Jim Hutton, and the new chair of Economic Development Commission, Caitlin Gordon, both were interested in joining myself on this steering committee. So all 4 of the towns are going to their respective bodies, whether they're councilors or selectmen, and having their legislative or branch or executive branch, I'm sorry, actually formally appoint these members. So what we're asking you all tonight is to appoint myself, Caitlin, and Jim to this committee.
Thank you. Do we have to do these individually?
No, I think, oh, and I should mention too that the term, it's going to be a 2-year term. That's going to go January 1st, 2021 to January 1st, 2023. So I think you can capture us all in one motion with that term date that I just identified.
Steve, you got that?
Yep, I got that. And if there's no other discussion, I would entertain a motion that we appoint the following individuals to a term of January 2021 to January 2023: Michael Rosen, Caitlin Gordon, and James Hutton to the 4-town Regional Economic Vitality Steering Group.
This is Brenda Felucci, I second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Brenda?
Aye.
Cassandra?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
I am an aye, so that's unanimous. Thank you. And then I think we have a reappointment to Blight, correct?
Blight and ethics. We
And
have 2.
ethics.
Yep.
Yes, it was Steve Jones here. I entertain a motion that we reappoint Jan Rubino to the Blight Review Committee for a term of January 1st, 2021 to January 1st, 2024, as well as Robert Tyndall to the Ethics Commission for a term of December 31st, 2020 to December 31st, 2023.
This is Cassandra Forsythe. I second that. Sorry, my dog. My dog.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Brenda?
Aye.
Cassandra?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
I'm an aye, so that's unanimous. Thank you, guys. That gets us to 10, report of the town manager. It's the first meeting of the month, so take it away, Mike.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to note that we skipped old business, but we didn't have any old business. So
I don't have any old business.
no, just letting, for the record.
Went right over 9, just right over that.
So Lisa can say no old business.
No old business, Lisa.
I actually made a little list here, so I've got about 6 things I want to brief everybody on. So I'm going to read from this a little bit. So first off, as has been our past practice for beginning the capital budget process, the town council received at 2 p.m. today an email with the budget memo for capital. This is the virtual counterpart to what we normally do at the first December town council meeting, which is hand deliver the budget information that night to the town council to begin reviewing in anticipation of the capital budget public hearing on February 11th, 2021. One project, the Firehouse Improvement Project, will be first debuted at our next town council meeting because of the important nature of this project and its scope. So we're going to give everybody a first look at this at the next meeting and talk about how the project may have changed from what people may have thought it was going to be a few years ago. And so that'll be at the next meeting. I also wanted to identify that Eversource is having a very important meeting on December 23rd via Zoom at 6 p.m. They're calling it Solutions to Help with Your Energy Bill. And so it's going to be an information session, which will be interactive and will raise awareness around payment assistance programs and ways to save on energy costs with energy efficiency. Login details were e-blasted out and are available on the town website. They're also on the town's Facebook page. And the way it's working is the town, we're going to be co-hosting the meeting with Eversource. It's our normal representative, Jonathan Ferrigno, that's reached out about this. I guess it's sort of an initiative that the company is rolling out to all of their towns, but we're one of the first ones. So it's kind of exciting that they're coming to us early on. And I've assured Jonathan that we'll take care of all of the Zoom stuff, and he's going to give a good presentation and also interact with the people who attend. So please mark your calendars for December 23rd at 6 p.m. We did put it on the town calendar as well. Town Hall and the public library will be closing at 4:30 p.m. on both Christmas Eve, December 24th, as well as New Year's Eve, December 31st. This is part of our personnel rules for Friday holidays. So we will be closing early both of those days. Another item is that a gentleman named Greg Bordenaro, who's the editor of the Hartford Business Journal, is doing a piece on Tolland. So be on the lookout for that in the near future. Brian Miller, our interim planning director, and I did an interview with Greg last week, and we highlighted all the good things that are going on in Tolland, and we're hoping that this article, shows a very favorable light for us, and I think it will. I also wanted to mention that there is a 2020 U.S. Census Bureau thank you webinar on Thursday that I'll be attending. It will feature information, statistics, stories, and more pertaining to our involvement in the 2020 census. I do believe, I haven't looked at the numbers recently because they took them down off the website. I think Tolland did finish #1 in terms of participation rate in the state. So, that's bragging rights for us, obviously. And then lastly, I wanted to end by showcasing an example of something nice for a change that DPW received in the mail. And Scott's not here tonight, but I just want to recognize him for this. So I'm going to share my screen. If he was here, I would have embarrassed him, but he's not here. So we received this letter. I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit here. I don't know if you can see this. I redacted it because I didn't get the permission from the student, but hello, my name is blank. I would like to share with you a few drawings that my teacher suggested could be used here in town. These designs are for a snowplow and rescue vehicle. It would be my hope that one day my designs could be used to help the town and people of Tolland. I have included my designs and would look forward to hearing from you. Thank you in advance. And it's a student from a 6th grade class at TMS. So he sent, I don't know if I can flip this over. Let me see if I can rotate this clockwise. Okay, so he sent over a nice drawing of a vehicle, and that's it looks like an all-terrain vehicle. And then also a snowplow, nice design there. And also a non-vehicle trailer. And I just want to appreciate that Scott took the time to respond. And actually, let me try to flip that back.
You're gonna have to flip it 3 times.
Yeah. So Scott actually wrote back to the young student, and thank you for sharing your drawings of the vehicles that you think would benefit the residents of the town. We have found them to be very interesting, and we wanted to share a picture of one of our most recent capital purchases. As you can see, we've incorporated many of your specifications that you included in your design, such as high-powered lights, strobe lights, a snowplow, a chemical spreader for salt. Our trucks have automatic chains, etc. So thank you for taking a special interest in our vehicles and how they serve the residents in town. I just think that that's nice that, maybe you just sparked somebody's interest in local government by responding to that letter. So, and there's the picture of the truck that the capital budget funded last year. So I just wanted to highlight that. I think it's, we hear a lot of negative stuff, just, it's the industry we're in. So every once in a while, it's nice to have a win.
That is great. Tell Scott, thank you for doing that. I'm sure he made that little kid's day. Good design. I like it.
That's all I have, by the way.
That's all you have? Okay. Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Mike? Steve. Yeah, Steve.
Not so much questions. I just wanted to give kudos just from the report, reading over it. Obviously, we've known for some time, but the photographic evidence of that removal of that pesky tree on 74 near Burbank was taken care of after a lot of work by Chief Lightel, and giving kudos to him for his, I think it was CCMO program certification, as well as congratulations to Lisa for her CCM certification that was successfully completed after a lot of work. And also just a final, kudos to Debbie who is retiring after 36 years. And I don't know if Jason's still on the call, but obviously they're in the process of getting a replacement for Debbie's retirement. So just want to thank them for their over 3 decades worth of service to the town.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Mike, I do have a couple of questions. Maybe Lisa can help with this one, but I noticed you had said the 2019 supplemental motor vehicle grand list has been received from DMV. And I know historically we've seen much higher numbers than we anticipated with that. And I know, Lisa, you had taken some liberties with the last budget in there to try to kind of true it up. Do we have any idea at all if we're on track or if we'll continue to see growth there?
Lisa, do you have that? Because I just have an anecdotal thing that I spoke to Jason about earlier. I don't know if you have anything more.
Yeah, he hasn't filled me in yet. I know he's still working on everything
Yeah.
and recently just got the numbers, so I have not been given any updates as of yet.
Oh, I don't want to necessarily, give a number that's not accurate because it hasn't been released yet, but I'll just talk from an industry-wide standpoint. So I actually was on a CROG call earlier today where this came up about how are towns doing with motor vehicles at this time during the pandemic, where anecdotally, it seems like people are driving less, so it's deferring potentially maintenance and replacement of vehicles. People are also, not having as much wear and tear on their vehicles at this point. So maybe you delay another year or so before you buy a new car. So that industry-wide, from what I talked to CROG about, it's down about 20% in terms of new vehicle purchases. And I don't know that we're necessarily in line with that figure, that metric, but I wouldn't be surprised if we are. So that's just anecdotal. I don't have any specifics at this time.
Okay, thank you. Also, the second installment of taxes for the grand list are coming up, and I wasn't sure if we've received any inquiries from mainly I'm thinking more businesses than anything, but anybody inquiring about delay of paying their January bills.
I haven't heard of any. I don't know if Lisa has heard of any.
I haven't heard of any, but I can check with Michelle to see if she has and have someone get back to you.
Thank you. And I noticed that we got the FEMA money in, the 75%, and you said that we are going to be applying to the state fund for the 25%. Are we still on track to expect that we're going to get that 100% back, and then that's going to go right back into the emergency storm account, correct?
Right. We actually did receive the state money already.
We did.
And yes, the FEMA money has been approved, but they have not processed the payment yet. Okay. So the state is ahead of FEMA. I'm in the process now of trying to do another application to FEMA for the September 30th end, but it's a very small amount that we're not even sure if we'll be eligible for what I'm asking. It's under $12,000 right now.
Yeah.
So we're working on that. And then the state, I received a notification from Martin Heff from OPM that they're looking at the portion of the rest of the allocation to do it on some sort of allocation basis. And once they have more details on it, they're going to get it back to us. And it sounds like we're not going to have to go through with entering all the stuff like we did last time to get whatever they're going to allocate us. And also, Jason just got back to me on the motor vehicle question. He says the supplemental was down 20% in vehicles. Not sure about the value yet.
There you go. Yep,
yeah, and he says, I just found out that DMV released the 2020 list this afternoon. No word on the early estimates on that one yet. So
thanks for checking into that, but we're right in line with our regional average too.
Yeah.
So is that going to be a problem for us from a revenue perspective?
We really have to look and see, because I did take into account some reductions for some of actually, no, that I will take into account for some reductions when it comes on to the next grand list. So yes, it will reduce that value as to how much taxes we can collect if it does go down. We just have to see where we're at overall for sure. along
Okay.
with the supplemental too.
Thank you. Thank you. And Lisa, congratulations to you and your team for the CCMO certification.
Thank you. Mike Rosen also received it. There were
Oh,
three
Mike
of
did that
us.
too.
Yeah, Mike Rosen, John Lytell, and myself. We all went through the program and recently succeeded and were awarded just the other day at the CCM conference. It was a virtual conference.
Mike, can you please pass on my congratulations to John also, and congrats to you too.
Thank you. I will.
Thank you. Did anybody else have anything for the town manager's report? All right, 11, adoption of minutes.
All right, Steve Jones, I would entertain a motion. Let me just pull up the agenda here. Just escaped me for a moment.
November 24th.
Yeah, the November 24th minutes as outlined in, sorry, my computer just suddenly wants to go extremely slow. As laid out in 11.1.
This is Brenda Fusi, second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, Brenda,
Aye.
Cassandra,
All right, aye.
Steve,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Lou,
Aye.
Kurt.
Aye.
I am an aye, so that passes unanimously. All right, that gets me to the chairperson's report. Okay, on, I had a couple of things, not a lot. So, as you guys, I'm sure already know, I am the new representative elect for the 53rd district, and we have to have ideas for our bills and legislation in by the end of the month. I've been meeting with all the towns, their boards of finance, boards of ed, and boards of selectmen. And this is a little weird because I'm on the town council, so I'm reaching out to you guys now in that other capacity to say, I need any issues that you guys want me to focus on this year to send them over to me so we can start having conversations on that, and I can find ways to find other people and to bring that forward in legislative ideas. So I'm going to be meeting with Mike coming up soon, and I'm also going to be meeting with the Board of Ed. I already met with Planning and Zoning, and I am going to be meeting with Dr. Willett also. So any issues that you guys have that you would like me to focus on in the upcoming session, if you can please either reach out to me, send me an email, or bring them up here. I can take notes in that and then go forward. So let's see, there's that. And then again, as the beginning of the meeting, I'm encouraging everybody to go to the upcoming Board of Ed meetings, especially the community workshops for the budget and that, to make sure you have your pulse on what's happening and what it's going to look like from a budgetary perspective. I wanted to mention we had our tree lighting ceremony last weekend, and even with everything that's going on right now, planning, the Permanent Celebration Committee found a way to keep our holiday tradition alive, and found a way to do the tree lighting ceremony, and it was great, and I wanted to thank them for that. And then, Mike, there's a couple of things in your town manager's report that I'm gonna send stuff out on, like the local prevention councils, free, the DETRA drug deactivation bags, and the holiday care and share program. Have either of those, I'm sorry, I'm a little behind on email, gone out via an e-blast by chance?
I'm going to look on the town's website now to see.
You don't have to look right now. You can just, take a peek and let me know. If not, then I'll make sure I put something out too. But if we can get something up about the holiday care and share program, and those the drug deactivation pouches is a good thing also. And then I don't have anything else for mine. Brenda, I jumped over correspondence to council.
Okay, I knew you'd get to it.
I'm apparently all over the place. So correspondence to council.
All right, we received some correspondence from a resident today asking for us to ensure there's going to be funding to prepare for applying for grants for ADA projects, specifically for the sidewalks, I guess, on the green. We also received a couple emails from a resident with information on climate emergencies and asking for us to declare a climate emergency. And he gave us also a few examples. And then we received a number of other correspondence from organizations asking us council members to sign up for different programs and events, et cetera. None of them were from residents though, so.
Thank you. That gets us to 14, to communications and petitions from council persons. Does anybody have anything for me tonight? Steve.
Yeah, Steve Jones. Actually, this kind of falls possibly under your chairperson's report. On it's very a mixed situation, as you explained, being a representative elect. But do you have an official email address that residents or the councilors on the town council can reach out regarding state legislative issues, or is that not established until you're sworn in technically?
I do not have the email address till I'm sworn in, so I've been giving everybody my my personal email address for that, and it's just tammy.nuccio@yahoo.com. If anybody has anything they need to reach out to me, and once I get my actual email address and all of that, I'll be sure that I put it out there for everyone.
Okay, and then otherwise, just for correspondence or petitions from council persons, I was just going to extend some thanks and gratitude to Public Safety, Troop C, and Public Works for their response to the first kind of notable winter storm of this season. It seemed that there were multiple roads that had to either be shut down or power lines that were impacted. So it seemed like everyone worked really well together. And then finally, just as a point of note, this Sunday, there will be another COVID testing event at the Tolland High School, I believe from 12 to 3 p.m. So if there are any residents either in need or desiring to get a COVID test, those are available free to you through a drive-through process.
Perfect.
13th and the 27th. Thank you, Steve, for mentioning.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Right after the Christmas holiday, there's another one.
Thank you, Steve. Brenda?
Yes, we had received an email from a resident about a month ago, and I just found out it was sent out individually to each of us council members. It was asking for us to declare racism as a public health emergency. Currently, 15 towns in Connecticut have done this so far, and a few have even added either a ad hoc committee or created a diversity and inclusion commission on racial justice and equity. I would like to take some further look into creating a racism and public health crisis proclamation. It does a lot of things. One of the things it does is help us be cognizant on every decision that we make and ensure that we have equity when it comes to racism, that we're making sure that everybody receives the same benefits. And I'd also like to find out from residents how they feel about this. I've seen that through different rallies and demonstrations in our town on a number of different occasions, that this is something that seems to be pretty important to residents. So I'd love to find out from other residents if they can email us at towncouncil@tolland.org to let us know how they feel about this. And if we get more residents, formally asking for this, I would like us to consider this and take a look at the email. It was very, very well written. There's a lot of information in there and a lot of links to areas on why this is very important, even to a small town like Tolland. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Steve again.
Sorry, I'm circling back because we went pretty quickly through the appointments to boards and commissions. So there were 2 points I wanted to make, and one was actually just a heads up to Councilor Schenner that one of the residents who was interested in serving on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board is intending to meet at next week's Zoom meeting. I know they've been meeting in person the past few months, and I think they switched to Zoom. So just keep a lookout for probably a new person at that meeting. They may have questions, or I recommended they reach out to you since you've been attending those meetings for your input and experience. But I also wanted to reach out to the entire council and possibly Town Manager Rosen about whether or not we should establish a close-off date for the task force on the mental health and substance use for the end of this calendar year, or if we were going to extend it further. We kind of left it open-ended for applications. I believe at this point we received at least 4 residents, 1 member of the clergy, as well as at least 3 or 4 Board of Ed members and at least 2 council members. Just doing the math, I think we're pretty close to the cap before alternates, but I wanted to make sure that we were on top of that in terms of getting last minute emails of interest before Councilor Luba and I go through the process of screening those applications.
Okay, Mike, do you have a suggestion on when we should close it, or?
I think Steve just did a great job of recapping where we're at. I think so. If I remember correctly, it's 11 total members and 2 alternates. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We might be around 10 right now. I think we had to be careful because I don't think you can have 4 Board of Ed members. I think it's up to 3 per
Up
board.
to 3.
So I think we only have 10 accounted for at the moment. We might want to put out another push to see if we can get some more candidates. The other thing too is obviously, we'd want to do some due diligence and interviewing and making sure we get the best people on the committee, et cetera. So it'd be nice to have options, but I don't know. Maybe if we put one more push out and then put a deadline on it at that point, maybe around New Year's or something.
I'm good with that. I think if we do another push and like you said, maybe either New Year's or, the first week or so of January, say this is our deadline, and put out another e-blast on it, maybe we can top off with a couple other people.
Yeah, I feel like the holiday season, it's very difficult to get people to want to throw out that interest. There's so many emails and deals and sale emails going on that it's kind of a lot of noise. So perhaps allowing a 1 week grace period after New Year's.
After the New Year,
the deadline is the end of the year with a 1 week grace period going into January 8th that, we'd be accepting applications.
I'd be fine with that. I'm just going to take a quick look at the calendar. January 8th is
Elvis's birthday, my nephew's birthday.
That's a Friday. Maybe if we say the 7th is a Thursday, that way.
Yeah.
So
okay, Lou, your hand has popped up and down a few times. You good?
Yeah, I can't decide if I want to talk or not. Thank you.
When in doubt.
I was going to actually thank you, Mr. Jones, because that's one thing I had on my list that I missed before, but I think it's something that would be good. I think that the second week or the first week of January would be a good deadline. That way it'll give me myself and Steve an opportunity to go to work out a game plan on the interviews and hopefully get those interviews done as quickly as possible so we get this group up and running as soon as possible. Because I think that's something that we all would like to see happen. That's it. There was other comments I had, but I'll wait till I'll wait to see how things pan out for the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Lou. All right, I don't see anything from anybody else. So that gets us to number 15. Look I'm like skipping all over the place tonight. I'm a hot mess. 15, public listed participation, any subject within the jurisdiction of the town council, 3-minute limit. If you are on a device, go to participants and raise your blue hand. If you're on the phone, that is *9, state your name and address when we call on you. There are exactly 1 person, 2 people, public on. Not Lou, Mike and Claudette. Anybody want to say anything? Go once, going twice, going 3 times. Number 16.
All right, Steve Jones, I'd entertain a motion that we adjourn at 9:28 p.m.
Brenda Felicio.
It's Lou about
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor. Brenda.
Aye.
Cassandra.
Aye.
Steve.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Lou.
Aye.
Kurt.
Aye.
I am an aye also. Thank you guys. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
See ya.
Have a great night. Take care.